What's the best diet? Dietary Methods 1. So I'm really excited to get into this lecture, the next one after this as well, because I see this having so much application for so many people that I work with. And we're going to go through basically a number of different ways that you can implement a diet based on your current circumstances. So if we think back to one of our first slides, we said fat loss principles are universal. So to lose fat, everybody has to be in a calorie deficit. However, how we apply this to the individual is going to be very specific to them. So fat loss principles are universal, fat loss application is individual. So yes, we're going to try and look to create a calorie deficit if someone's looking to lose weight, or a calorie surplus if they're looking to gain weight. However, how that looks for me will be different for how it looks for you, how that looks different to the friends or the people that you train with. And today we're going to provide you with some of those concrete ways that you can do it. Because there's a lot of times in the fitness industry where one diet is touted as the best diet, it's the way of doing things. But often I say within our Lift the Bar group that to the man that owns a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if you're the person that only knows one way of dieting, then you're going to tell all of your clients and all of the people you know that's the way to do it. However, we know that's not the case. So hopefully today we're going to give you some concrete methods that you can go away and start talking to your coach about potentially the benefits of each. So the next two lectures, they're not designed, as I said, to tell you the best diet. And there's certainly no need to kind of memorize each of the approaches. It's just an opportunity for you to learn more potential tools for your toolbox when it comes to your nutrition and your dieting. But as always, it's hard to remain objective when you kind of plan for yourself. We often think, again, we plan best case scenario, we plan based on emotion. So to kind of make sure you get the best option, have a discussion with your coach so they can guide your decision-making process so that you can both come to a decision about what's the right approach for you. So when it comes to kind of our dietary methods, we have a main consideration, and that is, do you want to track your dietary intake? And by tracking your dietary intake, I mean, do you want to in some way measure what you are taking in? And obviously from there we just decide yes or no. And if yes you do, we're going to use that, what we call a kind of manual method. Remember, I quite like my car analogies. So your manual method, where you will have to physically track something, or a more of an automatic. If you don't want to track anything, that's absolutely fine too. But we use more of an automatic style where we implement certain strategies that will naturally help you create that calorie deficit. But if you want to track or not, once we've got that kind of sorted, then we have to consider other factors, such as your goal, the training phase that you're in, how much education you have when it comes to food, how motivated you are currently, your preferences, as well as your lifestyle. And as we said before, not only does this differ from person to person, the right approach that will work for you now might not be right for you in 3 months' time when your goals change, or when your lifestyle changes, or when you've actually gained more education. So let's break this down a little bit. So your goal. And greater goals basically require greater levels of restriction and accuracy. So there's a big difference between somebody who wants to shift 2 stone, who's currently 5-10 stone overweight, compared to the person who wants to step on stage in a bikini or in their swim trunks to do a physique competition, a kind of bodybuilder style competition. And normally the greater the goal, or the more lofty the goal, the greater the level of restriction and accuracy that's needed. Your training phase. So if you're somebody who is a keen interest in performance, in improving strength, or your running times, your triathlon times, then if we're going to be pushing harder, then obviously we might need a certain level of accuracy once again with our nutrition, and we can't really be as lenient. However, if you are in a busy period in your life where you're just kind of what we call punching the clock in terms of your workouts, you get in, you get them done, you get out, then actually you might be able to use a slightly more less restrictive approach. How educated you are. So how much do you actually know about nutrition? And hopefully, it will be lots compared to a lot of people by the end of this course. But it really does matter. So, for example, for myself, it'd be relatively easy to do what we call IIFYM if it fits your macros, or calorie macro counting, where I kind of track how many grams of protein, fats, and carbohydrates I have per day by weighing and measuring my food. Because actually, a lot of the time, I know, what a good source of protein is, what carbohydrates are, what fats are. However, for a lot of people, when you first start out, you simply don't know that, and that's absolutely fine. However, the problem comes when coaches ask you to count macros when you're not even actually sure what a kind of a macronutrient is, or what sources of food have what macronutrients in. How motivated you are. Motivation, as we know, as long as you don't look at Instagram, ebbs and flows. It's not about grinding all day and no days off. We're human beings, and as we know, willpower and motivation is going to be impacted by outside influences, not just your wants and desires to train. Life has an impact on you. So if you are, for example, have a holiday coming up, or if you're a bride to be, there's a chance that you're super motivated, and so we can kind of push you to some harder dieting strategies to get better results. However, if we do that with somebody who's not particularly motivated at the moment, maybe they're getting that winter coat on, and maybe, like I said, they're working on their strength numbers. If we try and push them too hard in terms of how hard their diet is to kind of stick to, they're not going to stick to it. And again, then we kind of violate our adherence is king type policy. What is your preference? Some people actually enjoy dieting and knowing the numbers, counting those calories, counting those macronutrients. Other people, they're just too busy to do that. So do you actually enjoy tracking your intake, or do you not enjoy it? For some people, it's just way too much, and I'm one of them a lot of the time. And what best suits your lifestyle? Are you a busy mum of three who can't be taking time out of her day to weigh and measure all her food? Well, actually, then asking you to do that is not going to be a good idea. However, if you are a student with a bit more time on your hands potentially, then maybe that is the right approach for you. So all these factors have to be taken into consideration when we choose the right approach for you. So we're going to look at the first category of options that we've got, and it's our automatic options. So if you don't want to track your intake, and we've got these 8 options, we're going to go through them one by one. But an analogy I'll use here for as we go through this kind of continuum from number 1 to number 8, it's like going from ocean swimming to pool swimming. So when you're ocean swimming, you can literally go in any direction you want, and you've got a huge amount of freedom to go in lots of different directions. However, as things move down the continuum from number 1 to number 8, we kind of start putting in some slightly tighter parameters. And so now, instead of swimming in an ocean, you're kind of swimming in a pool. So we've just kind of restricted you a little bit. You've still got lots of room. If you go swimming in a large swimming pool, you've still got lots of wiggle room to go left, right, up and down. However, we have just confined you a little bit. And then as we actually move towards our tracking options, our manual options, we're going to be moving towards more of what we call lane swimming, where you're very much focused in the direction that you're going because you've got very strict parameters. So let's dig into some of these. Ad libitum dieting translates to at one's pleasure. So basically, this is where we are eating according to hunger. We don't have to actually weigh and measure anything. We literally eat till we're hungry and then we stop eating, or eat till we're full, and then we stop eating. However, lots of people actually struggle to interpret their hunger signals, whether that's be to dehydration, hyperpalatable foods, those foods that just taste so good and you eat them even when you're not hungry. We've talked about mindless eating, where our environment can set us up to eat more than we actually should do. And so it's not always a great option for most of us. And actually, if a lot of us, without the right education and foundations in place, eating ad libitum brings us to a place where we're actually overweight and where we actually need to start a diet and start thinking about our food. So we have to make sure we've got our really good education and portion control in place before we start trying to use this approach. As I said, you need good hunger signals. You need a sound relationship with food where you're not going to eat, if you have 2 biscuits, you're not going to eat the whole pack. You need to have a good understanding of what portion control is for your size and your activity. Basically, you've got the big rocks in place if you want to use this method. However, for lots of us, this could be the end goal. We basically have got ourselves in such a good place with our food, where we are regularly eating vegetables and protein and good fats and enough carbohydrates for our training. We don't overconsume junk food, but we can enjoy food out when we want to. And if we can get people to this place, this makes life so much easier. But it does take work to get there first, because if I just threw lots of you listening to this into an ad libitum diet, I'm sure there'd be many things that we need to try and adjust and change. However, we can take a step up from that, and we can do photos. So taking photo of your food provides you with education, because you can be aware of actually what you're putting into your body, as well as awareness and accuracy. So as we said on our underreporting lecture, we tend to forget lots of the food we've eaten. However, if you take a photo of the food and drinks that you have throughout the day, and then you can reflect on them at the end of the day, and you'll see, I've not eaten enough vegetables today. I actually had no fruit. I only had 2 meals, or there wasn't enough protein, or there was way too many carbohydrates. It's a very easy way of providing objective feedback. And it can help to recalibrate your portion control, because, again, for a long time, some of us might have thought, oh yeah, that is a serving of rice, that's a serving of vegetables, but actually, wow, that was way more cheese than I thought, for example. It also provides feedback on food quality. As I said, how many vegetables do you see on your plate throughout the day? Did you use your portion control guide as well? And it can also provide your trainer with some information. So instead of just telling your trainer, which we often hear, I'm eating well, I'm eating healthily, actually you can send those photos in a collage to your trainer, and they can very quickly look through it and say, yeah, okay, we need to increase vegetables, we need to make sure we get some protein in your breakfast, etc. So it can provide you with some accountability as well. So you're not just saying you're eating well, you can actually show that you're eating what you should be eating. And how can we adjust this then? Well, we can adjust it by, the frequency of photo. Maybe you don't want to take photos every day. Maybe you don't take it on 3 days of the week or 2 days of the week. We can adjust our portion sizes again, so we can kind of look at the photos and say we need to up something or reduce something. And we can obviously change our meal frequency. So you haven't got to take photos throughout the whole day. Maybe it's just breakfast you concentrate on at the start. Okay, moving down the continuum, we've got our habit-based approach or habit-based diet. And again, if you haven't watched the 2 lectures on habits yet, go back and watch them. Remember that habit statement: I am 90% confident I will eat a portion of protein for breakfast for the next 7 days. And if you are going to choose this approach, choose 1 to 3 high-impact habits. So what's going to give you 80% of the benefit for 20% of the input that that you can stick to. Remember, you've got to be 90 to 100% confident. The more habits we try to undertake at once, the chances of successfully maintaining those habits are drastically reduced. So that's why we go for our 1 to 3 high impact habits. And this can be brilliant for long term. So we can do our phases of hard dieting, and we talk about this in our long term dieting approaches. But then we can move to kind of a maintenance phase where we're looking to maintain our weight, but actually we're looking to improve our choices. Because the more good habits we can get in place, the easier this dieting process gets, because we're now working on autopilot as such, and we're not having to use conscious effort and control. We have to make it personalizable, remember. So what is my 90% gets me 90% confident I can do it might not be 90% for you. So change the units, change the volume, change the intensity. And a nice easy way of kind of building some momentum with this is to use a calendar to tick off each day that you successfully implement your habits. As I said, there's journals. I use the self journal, but you can just use your calendar. The Seinfeld method, as James Clear calls it, and basically you just tick it off every day that you've done your habit, and you just try and keep the run going. And this can kind of promote what I call the cascade of success, where you look to only implement 1 to 3 habits, but actually because you're doing well and you're achieving those habits, the impact kind of is knocked on. It's that domino effect where, well, I've had a good breakfast and I got my protein in, so actually I'm going to have some fruit as my snack instead of normally having that Mars bar, and actually I'll walk to work instead of catching the tube, and all these small little things that kind of build our success. But a little note of caution with this is actually, does it motivate you? I talked about this in the previous lectures, but people come to me in previous years really motivated to lose weight. They wanted to lose some weight quickly, And I would try and put them on this habit-based approach because I know long-term it does promote success, but actually initially it just might not be sexy enough for some people and it might not match their motivation. So if this style doesn't currently motivate you, then maybe it's something you'll implement at another time. The process-based approach. So this is a slightly more advanced version of the habit-based. Basically, we set a small number of guidelines for each meal. So this is, again, promoting good habits, good behavior change, but we're a little bit more specific to you on a per meal basis. So each meal, basically, you adhere to, you give yourself a tick, and then you kind of, at the end of the week, you count up your ticks, and you see, have you matched your predetermined number? So with your coach, we'll say, how many meals do you have on average per day? Okay, you have 3 meals, so that's 21 meals per week. We want you to try and get ticks in 15 meals this week. And for an example, my guidelines for each meal may be a palm of protein and a serving of vegetables. And if I get that, I've hit my process. Because remember, we talk about this in our goals section, but we want to focus on the process basically, and that will take us to the outcome. Just to paraphrase very quickly. So, but what my guidelines are may be very different to the guidelines of Steve or Eve. And we're looking for roughly a ticks for 80% of your meals. It's a great ballpark figure. And if you're not regularly hitting 80% at the end of the week, fine. Let's adjust our goals, talk to your coach, and make it so you can hit 80%, make it slightly easier. However, if you regularly hit 80%, then actually we can keep what we're doing, or we can actually look to add to it. So again, it's a great easy way of making sure each meal or on a per meal basis, we are doing the things that we need to do. A score-based diet. So this is very easy, subjective, but each day reflect on your food intake and score yourself 1 to 10. The kind of criteria for 1 to 10 is completely up to you and your coach. So you could say, okay, 1 is I didn't follow any nutritional advice you've given me and I only ate rustlers. And 10 is like, I had 3 portions of protein, I had vegetables, at least 2 meals, I had carbohydrates at 2 meals, and I didn't snack. Whereas a 5 might be I had 2 portions of protein, but I didn't have any vegetables and I had 1 snack. Whatever it is, maybe it's completely up to you to make up your marking criteria. But basically, we are looking for the average score over the course of the week. And then we take all our numbers, obviously we get the average, and then we kind of look, okay, if we're 5 or below, then maybe we need to reassess and adjust not only the support that you're currently receiving, but your current situation. If you're getting 7 pluses, then keep doing what you're doing because you're doing well to stick to the plan. And again, instead of focusing on the outcome, use this score-based approach to focus on the process that's going to take us to the outcome eventually. If you want to adjust it, as we said, you can adjust the criteria from month to month or week to week based on changes in your circumstances. So, if you've got a super busy week, then maybe you ease up on yourself and make the scoring system a little bit easier so you can try and stick to it. And this allows you to track in a highly individualized but practical way. However, caution for some people, this might be too ambiguous for some people. Some people are inherently negative with themselves and they may actually be doing everything right, 10 out of 10, but they score themselves 5 or 6. And then this can make it difficult for the coach or your trainer to make objective decisions. However, others go the other way. We respect our coaches and our trainers and we want them to think that we're doing well. So they might fudge the numbers a little bit and actually be a little bit too lenient with themselves, scoring themselves 7s, 8s and 9s when it actually should only be 5s or 6s. So we have to have that awareness there. Next up, rule-based approach. So set parameters or rules for the diet that naturally limit your calorie intake. And this is a really easy way of helping people create calorie deficit. So examples of this are things like no gluten, intermittent fast where you only eat through certain hours of the day, or not having fats and carbs in the same meal. And so what we want to do is identify reasons that we overconsume. So if you're somebody that eats loads of calories in the evening, maybe we say no calories after 6. There's no magic to that, but we're just finding a solution to your current problems to help make it the easiest that we can to help you create that calorie deficit. And so we just look to create a few overarching themes or guidelines that's going to help you move you towards your goals. And it's got to be specific to you, and we can be creative here. There are no hard and fast rules. As we said, there's no scientific evidence to say that eating fats and carbohydrates at the same meal make you fat. However, If you can only eat meals that have just fats in or just carbohydrates, again, that limits your options and it lowers calories. It takes calories away from you. And so loads of examples here, but as I said, you can get creative as you want with these. But intermittent fasting, where you simply eat in basically a calorie window. So for most people, eating over 8 hours. So you'll probably skip breakfast, and I know controversial, and we'll talk about that later on. Not. And basically you'll eat from 12 o'clock, so you skip breakfast, you'll have a light lunch and a larger tea. So you eat somewhere between 12 till 8, let's say, and then you don't eat after 8 o'clock till your next 12 o'clock the next day. Again, there's no magic to it really, but it just stops you from over-consuming calories. Protein spared modified fast, PSMF, and that's basically where maybe on 1 or 2 days a week you're only allowed to eat protein and vegetables, and this drastically reduces your calorie intake, which can help create a calorie deficit over the course of the week. No carbs until your evening meal. Again, there's nothing magic about this, we're just reducing calories. No fats and carbs together. Eat all your vegetables and protein first. Can sound quite weird, but basically what we're doing is we're filling up on the protein and the vegetables, and so this basically limits the amount of carbs and fats we have that are a bit more calorie dense that we might actually overconsume later on in the meal. Mindful eating, so going and sitting down and eating without any distraction. Each meal must have a fist of protein, for example, or you can set a meal and snack frequency. You're only allowed 3 meals a day, whatever it is. These are all just very easy ways of implementing rules that will stop you from overeating. And this is where a lot of fad diets actually sit. If we think of Slim Fast, a shake for breakfast, a shake for lunch, an evening meal. There's no magic to that. They just simply cut calories. But work with your coach, to kind of, again, it's very hard to be objective with ourselves. So work with your coach to understand, why these rules work. So a lot of diets, again, they promote this kind of magic, why their diet's working. Often it's to do with creating a calorie deficit. That's the way it works. Or they might promote more healthful foods in a roundabout way. But, there's nothing wrong with implementing these rules to get some results, but understand why they work. Template-based approach, and we've kind of looked at this when we looked at our precision nutrition type thing, but work with your coach, develop a basic food template with a snack and meal frequency. So for basically what we'll say is, here are all your protein options, here are all your carbohydrate options, here are all your fat options with rough portion guides. Let's say, for example, 25 grams of protein, and we'll provide you with 5 options. So that's 3 whole eggs, 200 grams of Greek yogurt, 90 grams of chicken, 100 grams of salmon. You get the idea. Same thing for carbohydrates. 50 grams of carbohydrates is 2 sweet potatoes, 2 medium bananas, whatever it is may be. Obviously, this has got to be specific to your needs. And then all we do is obviously alter the size of the portions or alter the frequency of meals. So people who are training hard and regularly may need to have 4 or 5 meals a day. Whereas if you're a little bit more desk-based, not burning as many calories, you might only need 2 or 3 of these meals per day. And then basically this gives you a good structure for eating, as well as providing with swap options. So basically, you can take all your carb options, so potatoes, rice, oats, whatever it is, and you can choose one lot of carb options, one lot of protein options, one lot of fat, and that way it gives you a really easy way of eating to your calorie budget, getting in all the macronutrients you need, but without having to think about it too much. And so a great example of this that we've talked about before is our precision nutrition kind of portion control guide, and we've talked about that before. So if you want to adjust the number of actual meals you have each day. If you need to gain weight, add in meals. If you need to lose weight, remove meals, as well as removing our cups of carbs and our thumbs of fats that we talked about. An example here then, so this was by Danny Lennon for I believe a junior rugby player. And as you can see, we've kind of got this general kind of template here. It's like breakfast, choose one of your high protein options. Lunch, include one of your protein sources plus 2 handfuls of carbs, etc., etc. So you can think you've got a list of carbs, a list of protein, etc. with the amounts. And then this is just kind of a picture representation of it. So, breakfast, we've got our protein sources with our carbohydrates, our chicken, our post-training recovery, etc., etc. So you can work with your coach to kind of build one of these up. So just to summarize our non-tracking options, it's kind of going from ocean swimming at the top with our ad libitum dieting, eating to our pleasure, to eating in a more structured kind of template manner, which is lane swimming. It gives us, still got plenty of freedom, but it does give us more parameters. It does give us a little bit more direction. what works today might not work for might not be right for next month. So make sure you're talking to your coach about changes in circumstances, changes in motivation, changes in goals, so you can adjust accordingly. The diet's got to be yours. What works for you and your best mate aren't going to be the same, or probably won't be the same. So speak with your coach, sit down to work out what's best for you. And the more we can educate you and empower you on this course, the more options that you have, the better educated you are to make decisions, then the easier it is for you to be able to say, I'm going to do this because, and not have to be reliant on other people and other fad and poor advice. So as I said, sit down with your trainer, go through they'll probably present you with a couple of the best options they think for you, and then you can talk it out. Next time, we've gone through then our non-tracking options, our automatic. Next time, we're going to talk about our tracking options, where we actually start to weigh and measure certain instances.